The Simpsons saw 9/11 coming years before it happened. They called Trump's presidency a decade early.
As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump.
They knew Disney would swallow Fox whole before anyone was even whispering about a deal.
The Simpsons from 19 years ago predict the future. It shows the entrance to 20th Century Fox movie studios.
People laughed every time until reality caught up. Now there's one more prediction, buried in an old soccer episode, and it lines up with the 2026 World Cup almost perfectly.
This match will determine once and for all which nation is the greatest on Earth, Mexico or Portugal.
If The Simpsons is right one more time, the final may already be decided. Number 8, the 9/11 frame nobody can unsee. Some Simpsons predictions are funny. This one stopped being funny on a single morning in September. In 1997, the show aired The City of New York vs. Homer Simpson, and it was never meant to feel dark at all. The plot is pure Simpsons stupidity. Barney takes Homer's car on a wild night out and leaves it parked right at the base of the World Trade Center, so Homer has to drag himself all the way to New York to get it back. He ends up stuck at the foot of the Twin Towers, starving, furious, and desperate to escape the city as fast as humanly possible. Just a man having the worst trip of his life. Then came the detail people still argue about today. In one scene, Lisa holds up a brochure advertising a bus trip to New York for $9. The number 9 is printed huge on the page, and standing right beside it are the Twin Towers. 9, next to 2 towers. After September 11th, people pulled that frame back up and saw something they couldn't unsee. The 9, sitting next to the towers, looked exactly like 9/11. Now, to be fair, skeptics call this pure coincidence a random price next to a famous skyline, and they've got a point. But that's the strange thing about it. Even knowing it's probably an accident, you still can't look at the image and not see it. That single frame became one of the biggest Simpsons prediction theories ever put online. After the attacks, the episode became genuinely uncomfortable to air, since the World Trade Center sat at the heart of the whole story. For years, it quietly vanished from a lot of TV rotations, and when it did return in places, parts were edited or handled with care, because those towers weren't just part of the skyline anymore. They'd become part of one of the most painful days in modern history. But not every prediction is that dark. Some are just impossible to explain, like the day a cartoon dropped a reality TV businessman into the Oval Office and treated it like a punchline. Number 7, President Trump predicted 16 years early. Long before the red hat, before the rallies, before any of it, a cartoon put Donald Trump in the White House and played it for laughs. Lisa Simpson walks into the Oval Office and says one line that would age in the strangest way imaginable. She's just become President of the United States, and the country is in trouble. She turns to her staff and says, "As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump." That episode aired in March of 2000. Trump did not actually become president until 2016, 16 years later, and that's what makes it land so hard. In 2000, Trump wasn't a politician. He was a New York businessman, a real estate name, a tabloid magnate, a celebrity who knew exactly how to keep the cameras on him. His name meant towers, money, loud interviews, splashy headlines. The Apprentice hadn't even premiered yet. To almost everyone watching, President Trump sounded like the kind of absurd future only The Simpsons would throw on screen for a cheap laugh. But it wasn't pulled out of thin air. Around 1999, Trump had already flirted with running, forming an exploratory committee with the Reform Party and floating a campaign in public. For most Americans, it still felt like celebrity noise, not a serious road to the White House. The writers just looked at a country where fame was quietly turning into power and pushed the idea all the way to the edge. Then real life caught up. When Trump entered the race for real, people treated it like a stunt. Then, he kept winning. He beat seasoned politicians who'd spent their whole lives preparing for that level of power. Scandals, protests, brutal debates, shocking headlines, none of it slowed him down. In 2016, he defeated Hillary Clinton and became the 45th president of the United States. And the moment that happened, every strange Simpsons scene ever aired suddenly got a second look. If predicting a president feels big, the next one is darker, a joke that came true as a real-life tragedy on a Las Vegas stage. The tiger attack they aired 10 years early. 2 performers, 1 white tiger, and a scene the writers meant as a joke 10 years before it happened for real. In 1993, The Simpsons aired an episode where Springfield opens its own casino, and the whole town gets sucked into a bright, loud world of gambling and Vegas-style stage acts. Then 2 flashy performers take the stage. Their names are Gunter and Ernst, and every single detail about them, the costumes, the dramatic lighting, the theatrics, and above all the white tiger, is built to remind you of Siegfried and Roy. The 2 men stand in front of the crowd, acting like they have total control over a wild animal. Then, the tiger turns on them. It attacks mid-performance, and a silly casino gag snaps into something colder. A reminder that a wild animal is still a wild animal, no matter how polished the show wrapped around it. At the time, nobody called it a prediction. It was obvious satire. Siegfried and Roy were world famous for performing with white tigers in Las Vegas. Of course, the show would parody them. Then, 10 years later, the cartoon stopped being funny at all. In 2003, Roy Horn was performing at the Mirage in Las Vegas when one of the white tigers, Montecore, attacked him during the show. Roy was bitten, dragged off stage, and critically injured. He survived, but the attack ended the legendary Siegfried and Roy show for good, and changed his life forever. Not every prediction is a tragedy, though. Sometimes the show just quietly called a business deal that nobody on Earth saw coming. Number 5, Disney buys Fox. During this 1998 episode, and you'd miss it, a single sign in the background that quietly predicted a $71 billion deal. The episode was called When You Dish Upon a Star. Homer stumbles into the world of Hollywood celebrities after meeting Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger, tastes the good life, and in classic Homer fashion, burns it all down. Near the end, the show cuts to the Fox studio lot, and that's where the strange part hides. On the studio sign, 20th Century Fox is shown as a division of the Walt Disney Company. No one in the episode stops to explain it. No character reacts, it just sits there in the background, like the writers were mocking the single most unlikely thing they could dream up. And back then, it really was unlikely. Fox and Disney felt like different planets. Disney was the polished family empire princesses, theme parks, a squeaky clean image. Fox was the sharper, louder, rougher cousin, happy to crack jokes that made powerful people look ridiculous. And The Simpsons was the crown example of that. The cartoon family that mocked American life, TV, politics, religion, celebrities, and corporate power at every turn. So the joke made a twisted kind of sense. What if even Fox, the very home of The Simpsons, got swallowed by the mouse? For years, that was all it was. A funny little jab at Hollywood. Then, the real world caught up. In 2019, Disney completed its enormous purchase of major 21st Century Fox assets in a deal worth around $71.3 billion. Disney took control of 20th Century Fox Studios, FX, National Geographic, Fox's TV production units, and a bigger stake in Hulu. Just like that, a throwaway background gag became corporate history, a joke that waited 21 years to come true. And then, the show turned its aim toward the biggest sport on the planet and didn't miss. Number 4, the FIFA corruption scandal. Homer Simpson as a World Cup referee sounds like a punchline. What the episode showed behind the tournament was anything but. In You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee, Lisa actually calls Homer her hero, because for once in his life he does the honest thing, and somehow, that single honest moment carries him all the way to the biggest football tournament on Earth. Suddenly, Homer isn't on the couch with a donut, he's on the pitch in Brazil in a referee's kit, making calls in front of millions. Then the joke curdles. From the outside, the tournament looks beautiful, packed stadiums, roaring crowds. But behind that glittering picture, the episode shows something rotten. A top official from the fictional football organization appears and openly, casually talks about corruption. He isn't shocked by it. He doesn't treat it like a small problem. He talks like the entire system has been poisoned by money and power. And then he gets arrested. At the time, it played like a sharp little gag. Everyone already suspected the World Cup wasn't only about goals and national pride, that it was also about TV deals, sponsors, hosting rights, and powerful men making enormous decisions behind closed doors. Fans loved the game. Plenty assumed the men running it were playing a very different one. Then, 1 year later, the real scandal detonated. In May 2015, football's most powerful organization was hit by a corruption case so massive it shook the sport worldwide. 14 people were charged, 9 of them football officials, 5 of them sports marketing executives. The charges included racketeering, wire fraud, and money laundering conspiracies. Officials and executives were accused of turning world football into a private money machine, where bribes and secret payments decided who got to sell, broadcast, and profit from tournaments watched by billions. And the numbers were staggering. More than $150 million in bribes and kickbacks paid or promised. Even the way it broke felt cinematic. Swiss police walked into a luxury hotel in Zurich and arrested several officials just before FIFA's annual Congress. Overnight, the whole image of FIFA flipped. For years, it had looked untouchable, the master of the single biggest event on the planet, with countries fighting to host it and companies paying fortunes to be near it. Then, suddenly, the headlines weren't about trophies. They were about arrests, bribes, and money laundering. Sepp Blatter wasn't cuffed that day, and he even won another term as president right after, but the pressure kept building, and within days he announced he'd step down. But the same episode wasn't done. Right there on the pitch, it dropped a result that came true in the cruelest way imaginable. Number 3 is Brazil's World Cup disaster. The cartoon said Germany would beat Brazil. Reality said, not just beat, destroy. That same episode put Brazil and Germany on a collision course for the 2014 World Cup, and in the cartoon, Germany wins 2-0. A harmless football joke. A few months later, the real World Cup arrived in Brazil, and what actually happened was far worse than anything the cartoon dared to show. Brazil didn't just lose to Germany in 2014. Brazil came apart in front of the entire world. This was a World Cup semifinal on Brazilian soil with a whole nation watching. Brazil had won the World Cup more times than any country in history. Their fans weren't just hoping to reach the final, they believed it was their duty to protect the pride of a football nation. Then, Germany scored. Painful, but normal big matches have early goals, strong teams recover. Then, Germany scored again. Miroslav Klose got the second, and in doing so became the highest scorer in World Cup history, a fact that should have been the headline of the night on its own. But there was no time to sit with it, because Germany just kept coming. Toni Kroos scored twice in quick succession. Then, Sami Khedira added another. Before the match had even reached the half-hour mark, Brazil were 5-0 down. 5 goals. In a World Cup semi-final against Brazil in Brazil. The crowd went silent in a way that felt almost unreal, fans staring at the pitch like they were watching something that couldn't actually be happening. Some cried, some covered their faces, some were too stunned to react at all. Brazil wasn't being beaten. Brazil was being dismantled. And the pain cut deeper because of what the tournament meant. Brazil hadn't hosted a World Cup since 1950, a tournament that had left a wound the country never fully healed when they lost the deciding match at home to Uruguay. So 2014 felt like a chance to rewrite history and finally win on home soil. But Brazil walked into the Germany match already broken. Neymar, their brightest star, was out injured, and captain Thiago Silva, the man who held the defense together, was suspended. Still, nobody imagined a public execution like this. Germany didn't ease off after the break. Andre Schürrle scored twice more. Oscar pulled one back late for Brazil, but by then it wasn't comfort. It was a tiny scratch on a night, already in ruins. The final score, 7-1. And the strangest part? The Simpsons didn't stop at Brazil losing. That same episode pointed straight at the one player Brazil could not afford to lose. Number 2, the injury that ended Neymar. Before Germany ever humiliated Brazil, the country had already lost the man it was leaning on, and the cartoon had practically drawn him first. It happened in the quarterfinal against Colombia. Brazil were still alive in their home World Cup, the crowd was deafening, and Neymar was carrying the kind of pressure only a Brazilian number 10 can understand. He'd already scored 4 goals in the tournament, and for millions of fans, he was the one player who could drag Brazil all the way to the title. Then, Juan Camilo Ziga drove his knee into Neymar's back. Neymar dropped to the grass and didn't get up. This wasn't time wasting. It wasn't a cheap dive for a foul. He was badly hurt. Brazil still won the match 2-1, but the score almost didn't matter. Their biggest star had been carried out of the tournament. The diagnosis was brutal, a fractured vertebra in his back. His World Cup was over. And here's where the Simpsons connection turns strange. In that same referee episode, Brazil also has a superstar, a character named El Divo. He's flashy, gifted, dramatic, adored, and treated as the player his country depends on. He's the kind of footballer who can change a game with a single touch, and also the kind people accuse of going down far too easily. That sounded exactly like Neymar. Neymar was brilliant with the ball, fast, skillful, dangerous, worshipped by Brazilian fans, but he was also mocked by critics for rolling, tumbling, and exaggerating contact. The Simpsons built El Divo around that precise reputation. In the episode, El Divo goes down mid-match, and Homer has to decide whether the Brazilian star is really hurt or just faking it again. A few months later, Neymar was lying on real grass in a real World Cup match, and nobody was laughing. Then fans noticed one more detail. El Divo's boots were later tied online to a Puma-style look. At the time, that meant nothing. During the 2014 World Cup, Neymar was a Nike athlete and had been for years. Any Puma connection felt like a random background choice. But years later, Neymar left Nike, and in 2020, Puma announced a long-term partnership with him. He became one of the biggest football names attached to the brand, wearing Puma boots. After so many football moments landed this close to reality, one last soccer joke from 1997 is now the one making fans nervous. Number 1, the 2026 World Cup final that may already be written. In 1997, The Simpsons showed a soccer match that looked like a throwaway joke. Now, almost 30 years later, that same scene is making World Cup fans genuinely nervous. The family is watching TV when an advert comes on for a huge soccer game, not a friendly, not a minor match. The ad sells it as the biggest game on Earth. Then, the teams appear on screen. Mexico versus Portugal. The match, the ad declares, would decide once and for all which nation is the greatest on the planet. At the time, it sounded ridiculous. Mexico and Portugal weren't anyone's obvious pick for the biggest football match in the world. But the scene never quite died. Years later, fans dragged it back into the spotlight, and the first big revival came during the 2022 World Cup. The clip went viral again, with people saying this could finally be it. Mexico was in the tournament. Portugal was in the tournament. Ronaldo was still chasing the one trophy missing from his career. The old scene looked ready to come true. Then it collapsed. Mexico crashed out in the group stage. Portugal was knocked out before the final. The theory died almost as fast as it had returned. For a while, Mexico versus Portugal looked like a failed prediction, but believers had one loophole left. The episode never said the match had to happen in 2022. So the theory stayed alive. And when the World Cup rolled to 2026, that old scene found a far stronger home. This time, the tournament is being played in North America, and Mexico isn't just another team fighting to survive. Mexico is one of the hosts. It's not watching from the outside, it's inside the story, playing in front of its own fans, on its own soil, with the whole world watching. And the tournament itself is bigger than ever. 2026 is the first men's World Cup with 48 teams, 12 groups of 4, with the top 2 from each group advancing, plus the 8 best third-place teams. That creates a round of 32 before the tournament even reaches the deep knockout rounds. A bigger bracket means more paths and far more room for strange matchups to happen. For the prediction to land, Mexico and Portugal don't just need to be good. They need to survive their groups, avoid each other early, land on opposite sides of the draw, and keep winning while the tournament cuts everyone else away. And Mexico's side of the story already has serious fuel because they didn't just scrape through, they tore through. Mexico opened by beating South Africa 2-0, then edged South Korea 1-0, then hammered the Czech Republic 3-0 to finish with a perfect record, 3 wins, 3 clean sheets, and the first group stage sweep in Mexico's entire World Cup history. On top of that, they became the only co-host to actually win their group, marching into the round of 32 on home soil, while the old Simpsons clip roared louder with every win. And Mexico's World Cup history carries real pain behind it. From 1994 to 2018, they were trapped in one of football's most frustrating patterns, reach the round of 16, lose there every single time. The 5th match became a ceiling they could never break. Then 2022 made it worse, when they didn't even escape the group. So a deep run in 2026 wouldn't just be success, it would feel like a nation finally breaking an old curse at home. And home can matter more than people think. Estadio Azteca in Mexico City sits more than 7,300 feet above sea level. Guadalajara is high too, above 5,000 feet. That altitude doesn't hand Mexico a trophy, but it can quietly punish teams that aren't built for it. The air feels different up there. Legs go heavy faster. Lungs burn sooner. The final minutes turn cruel for players already gasping. One defender reacts a fraction late. One pass falls a little short. One run goes untracked. In a World Cup, those tiny edges become enormous moments. Then there's Portugal, and Portugal carries a completely different weight, because everything about them comes back to one man. Cristiano Ronaldo is 41 during this World Cup, the oldest outfield player ever to start a World Cup match. He's no longer the young winger blowing past defenders on pure speed, no longer the rising star proving he belongs. He's a legend chasing the one prize that still refuses to be part of his story. Champions League titles, yes. League titles, yes. The European Championship with Portugal, yes. More international goals than any male player in history, yes. But never the World Cup. For a man who has won almost everything the game can offer, that single gap has become the defining hole in an otherwise flawless Ursum. Which is why Portugal reaching this final would become bigger than football, the last chapter of one of the most famous careers the sport has ever seen. And Portugal's 2026 has already been a roller coaster. They opened nervously, held to a 1-1 draw by tournament debutants Dr. Congo, with Ronaldo missing chance after chance and the critics circling. Then Ronaldo silenced every one of them, scoring twice in a 5-0 demolition of Uzbekistan and becoming the first player in history to score at 6 different World Cups. But their group refused to get easier. A goalless 0-0 draw with Colombia meant Portugal slipped through as runners-up, not winners, landing a round of 32 clash with Croatia. It doesn't kill the dream, but it makes every next match heavier and turns the Ronaldo story from a smooth farewell into a fight to stay alive. And they have the players to fight. Bruno Fernandes creating from midfield, Bernardo Silva slowing the game when everyone else is panicking, Rafael Leo bringing terror and speed on the wing. This is a team that can hurt you in a dozen ways. If they punch through the pressure, the theory only grows louder. The final is waiting on July 19th at MetLife Stadium in New York, New Jersey. That's the night every team on Earth is trying to reach. And if Mexico and Portugal somehow both arrive there, that old Simpsons scene would explode across the internet in a way few sports theories ever have. But here's the most unsettling part, and it isn't the teams at all. It's what actually happens during the cartoon match itself. The game in the episode is not a beautiful football dream. It's slow. It's frustrating. The crowd grows restless. The fans lose their patience. And then it all breaks down. The match turns violent. People start fighting. The atmosphere in the stadium slips completely out of control. There's no clean ending. No perfect final whistle. No calm moment where a captain lifts the trophy and the world celebrates. The Simpsons turned the biggest game on Earth into pure chaos. And because 2026 is being played in North America, some fans have tried to tie that dark ending to real-world tension 1 theory, even pointing to the strained relationship between the United States and Iran. Whether that's a stretch or a warning, one thing is certain. After everything you've just seen, nobody's laughing at these episodes anymore. So what do you think? Coincidence? Or do the writers know something we don't? And if Mexico and Portugal really do meet on July 19th, will you still call it luck? Drop your answer in the comments, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so the next prediction reaches you first.